Hello, School Transportation Nation. Welcome to the podcast brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. We have a new sponsor, BYD Ride, committed to empowering education by providing safe, reliable, and clean transportation to our communities, and our friends at School Radio, your source for reliable radio communications. Our guest today is John Van Dreal, school psychologist and safety security expert, who will also be the keynote speaker at the upcoming STN EXPO in Reno. He's got our lunch keynote on Tuesday, July 18th. Really excited for John to speak. It's coming up. Ryan's going to be talking with them, so I'm real interested to see what is happening there. But before we get to the headlines with Mr. Ryan Gray, editorial extraordinaire, I've got a message from BYD, our title sponsor at the Green Bus Summit. BYD Ride is committed to empowering education by providing safe, reliable, and clean transportation to our communities. The Achiever, BYD's Type A battery electric school bus, will be available to experience at the Ride and Drive. The Achiever can reduce our carbon footprint, eliminate pollutants, and create better air quality for future generations. Equipped with the latest technology, including V2G and anti-collision software, the Achiever is eligible for EPA Clean School Bus Program and many other state and local incentives. To learn more, go to ride.co. That's ride.co to learn more. All right, Ryan, July issue is out now. If you guys haven't seen it yet, go to the STN website, stnonline.com. Click on that magazine page. You can see the latest and greatest in July. So much good content. And there's a guy on the cover, and I want to send him heartfelt congratulations to the STN team. The Innovator of the Year, Bill Griffiths from Beacon Mobility. Interesting guy, great story about innovation, being the guiding light for his team at Beacon Mobility, who is a private fleet contractor. We did the award in collaboration with NSTA, the National School Transportation Association. And I know, Ryan, you got a chance to talk to Bill a bunch. He's a super interesting guy, got a deep background in transportation, started off as a mechanic in the military, and kind of moved through different jobs throughout the year. You want to share a little bit about Bill and some background on him and the Innovator of the Year award?
Certainly. So as you mentioned, he was in the Air Force. He was a mechanic in the Air Force and had a really storied career in fleet maintenance and management, fleet leadership, really. I mean, this is a guy who oversaw transportation of artifacts for the Smithsonian Institution. He's a former National Public Fleet Manager of the Year for his time when he was working the Montgomery County, Maryland government fleet. He has been in transit. He's, of course, now, like you mentioned, leading Beacon Mobility's companies in about 22 states nationwide, over 12,000 vehicles, really forward-thinking, really into artificial intelligence, moving his fleet operations into predictive maintenance. Really cool stuff that they're doing there out of Beacon. Of course, they're headquartered up in the Massachusetts area. Head over to stnonline.com, head over to our digital edition section, read all about him. He was on a panel that I moderated a couple weeks ago when we were in Indianapolis with our STN EXPO Indy, talking about how fleets are dealing with the pending EPA emission regulations, the latest regulations that are going into effect as soon as next year. So they are running 10 electric school buses. They are just, really on the cutting edge of technology. So, check out that article. It's a really interesting stuff.
Excellent, Ryan. I know 4th of July is upon us, right? I talked about at the front, family, fireworks, friends. Hopefully you get some family time in there for the holiday.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to at least a little bit of break. We, of course, have STN EXPO Reno in like a matter of weeks. 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. So really gearing up for that. And of course, we have our August magazine issue that's getting prepared. So no rest for the weary, but I think, definitely a little bit later in July, I'm going to take a couple of days off with the fam.
I saw last week there was a headline that had come out on the FCC re-engaging on the conversation of E-rate and school bus Wi-Fi. You want to give us an update on that?
Yeah, sure. Perfect timing with, like you mentioned, July 4th. We have a little bit of government news on stnonline.com. So some of you might remember last May, Jessica Rosenworcel, who's the Federal Communications Commission chairwoman, she put out a proposal that school buses be added to the government E-rate funding. So that is funding passed back in 1996 by Congress under the Telecommunications Act and administered by the FCC. A lot of you folks out there know of E-rate as that school building and library internet fund. And they've grown that over the years to include Wi-Fi, but again, for school buildings, for classrooms, for libraries. There's been a push in Congress for years now to get school buses under that Wi-Fi umbrella. And certainly there's a lot of Wi-Fi hotspot providers that are definitely eager to get that funding. Well, Chairwoman Rosenworcel put out this proposal last year. We thought we were going to see it voted on by the FCC last summer. We never did. We were kind of wondering what was going on with it. And just a couple weeks ago, Rosenworcel gave a speech, and she basically said that she's going to make this a priority. So there is a proposal that's coming out. The FCC evidently will be voting on this proposal. So, basically she was talking about how the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which we saw a couple iterations of the last couple years, especially during the COVID pandemic, where there was this emergency funding to get more Wi-Fi hotspots out into communities that really needed them, especially in terms of schools and all of the remote learning that was going on. Of course, we saw a lot of school districts use school buses with existing Wi-Fi hotspots and would park them out in communities so that school children could have access to internet where they maybe didn't already, or it wasn't high speed enough, that's what they needed to complete their homework. So we evidently will be seeing school buses at least being voted on. So now, of course, the FCC has to approve it, but stay tuned, folks. It's looking like school buses might have some additional federal funding at its disposal soon.
All right, before we get some more headlines, we got a message from School Radio. Hey guys, is reliable radio and communications important to you? Got a message from School Radio. The laws against using cell phones while operating commercial vehicles are in place for the safety and security of both your school bus drivers and your students. Taking that risk comes with a hefty fine, penalties, and even the disqualification of the CDL of the driver. School Radio specializes in providing wide area push-to-talk two-way radio solutions for schools and school transportation that are fully compliant with all hands-free operational laws. They offer a managed service program, which includes the device, all services, all maintenance at a fixed monthly budget point. No expense infrastructure or FCC license is required. Get a demo today by visiting school-radio.com. That's school-radio.com. All right, Ryan, we're back. I want to talk to you a little bit about NHTSA and emergency braking proposal. This is interesting, right? It is on the heels of some accidents, some research that's being done.
Yeah. So, basically what NHTSA is looking to do is standardize automatic emergency braking, or AEB. A lot of our cars already have, especially the late model cars, late model trucks, they have this kind of technology. It rolls up under collision avoidance and collision mitigation. And school buses, a lot of them already have it, at least as an option. There are a few out there that are standard. And, you look at like electronic stability controls. NHTSA is also looking to do that for heavy duty vehicles. Now, again, that already exists in the school bus place, but what NHTSA is really trying to do is, like I said, standardize, codify all of this. And what's interesting about the automatic emergency braking is, like I mentioned, a lot of vehicles already have that, but what a lot of today's vehicles don't have is pedestrian AEB. or pedestrian automatic emergency braking, where the vehicles can sense a pedestrian and automatically stop. So that is what NHTSA is trying to push. And there's a linkage there with what NHTSA is doing on the illegal school bus passing phenomenon. The epidemic, if you will, like what NASDIPS has called it. They do that annual survey each year of all the states, and those states that were participating in this year's survey, they just finished their counts about a month or two ago. We should be seeing that report a little bit later this summer. But NHTSA is studying illegal passing, and especially the technology used to try to thwart it. And then, of course, looking at what states are doing in terms of ticketing and enforcing illegal passing. So, that's under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That was mandated. So I know NHTSA has been working on that. We should be seeing some more work from them actually also this summer, or at least a little bit later this year. But with this pedestrian automatic emergency braking, that's kind of, Tony rolling up under some of the cellular vehicle to everything, or V2X projects that we've been seeing out there.
Been talking a lot about that at STN EXPO over the last couple of years.
Exactly. Yeah, we had a presentation last year in Reno by Applied Information, which is one of the companies that is really leading the charge with this AI, artificial intelligence. And already they're very active in school zones and speed detectors, right? And so they're looking at automatic braking for cars, warning systems when there's school buses that are loading and unloading students. Also, too, we talked recently in the magazine about the aspect of green light priority, so intersection priority for school buses. So this kind of all rolls up under the V2X. So really interesting stuff. It's still in the comment period. NHTSA's notice of proposed rulemaking, but that's going to be closing this summer. So definitely get over to the Federal Register and comment on that. So if you head over to stnonline.com and go to our news section, you can find that article and get more information on it.
Yeah, Ryan, also wanted to bring up, I saw a story on stnonline.com, and I know you've been putting together the STN EXPO Reno panel to discuss electrification experiences. I'm quite curious what that discussion is going to look like. You want to share with the audience a little bit?
Absolutely. So opening our Green Bus Summit on July 16th. So again, a matter of, couple weeks away, we're going to have a session that discusses kind of, the real life experiences with the whole electrification process. And it's really centering on, the mandates that we're seeing, right? So EPA, I mentioned before, 2024 is when the first level of that phase 2 GHG emissions requirements go into effect. We have another one coming in 2027. EPA is trying to finalize another rule for 2030 and beyond right now. So we're just seeing, again, the industry and really society being pushed this zero emissions direction. What does this mean infrastructure-wise? What does this mean in terms of the decisions that districts need to make? I mean, we're one of our panelists who's scheduled for that conversation, Karim Johnson. He's the Director of Student Transportation and Fleet Services at Bethlehem Central School District in New York. And they were the first district really outside of New York City to get electric buses. And all the districts in New York fall under a 2027 mandate in New York State, a law there that's going to require them to only make new school bus purchases that are electric. And they need to have the fleets completely electric, I think, by 2035. So there is a lot that needs to be figured out on how they're going to make that happen. But certainly the writing is on the wall for districts all across the country, and especially the dozen or so states that fall under the California Air Resources Board mandates. And school buses are a little bit separate from the advanced truck plan, but they still are all going toward electric, where they're looking at around 2040, all school buses be electric. So there's a dozen states, Oregon being one of them. We have one of our panelists, Kim Crabtree from Ben Lapine Schools in Oregon. Oregon falls under the CARB mandates. They follow that rule. Hearing from her, that she is going to be no longer able to purchase diesel school buses after this current procurement that she just put through. So, folks are definitely looking at how do we scale? How do we deploy? What are the bumps in the road? So we have a great panel. We have Alex Cook, who is last year's STN and NSTA Innovator of the Year Award winner. He's the chief engineer for First Student. I mean, this is the largest fleet of school buses in North America, right? And they are looking at electrifying about 70% of their 44,000 school buses, whatever that number is today, over the next 5 or so years. So he has really been, and his team has been leading the charge on this. So he's going to have great perspective to add. Also, Tim Zierle, who's the assistant superintendent of Modesto City Schools in Central California. We've talked a lot about what that district is doing to really advance the electrification of its fleet. So it's going to be a really, really interesting discussion led by our friend Ewan Pritchard, who is an engineer, consultant with Energetics. Some of you might remember Ewan. He worked on the hybrid electric school bus project going back, over a decade ago when he was based out of North Carolina. So this guy knows school buses, knows electrification, knows the journey that this industry has taken. So he's going to be a great guy to lead this conversation on July 16th.
All right, guys, if you still want to come to STN Expo, July 14th to the 19th, you still can register on site. The online registration's closed, but register on site. Come to Reno. We're happy to help you. If you guys have questions, you can email events@stnmedia.com. That's events@stnmedia.com, or you can go to the website, stnexpo.com, and click on Reno to learn more. So, Ryan, before we get to your guest interview with keynote speaker John Van Dreal, here's a message from TransFinder. Guys, have you ever seen a car commercial? They're always saying that the new model is sportier, faster, better. Well, the folks at TransFinder say that's the way to look at their new and improved Service Finder solution. It has the same name, but everything about the new Service Finder is better, faster, sleeker, more intuitive. Service Finder is the next generation of fleet and asset management software. It's browser-based and will make your fleet productive and cost-effective. Service Finder reduces burdensome paperwork, tracks your costs, and will help keep you from missing critical repairs. Let's face it, buses aren't cheap. You need to keep them running efficiently and lasting longer to get the most out of your investment. To learn more about Service Finder, visit transfinder.com or email them at marketing@transfinder.com, or give them a call at 800-373-3609. That's 800-373-3609.
All right, I want to welcome to the School Transportation Nation podcast stage, John Van Dreal. He's going to be one of our keynotes just in a couple weeks at STN EXPO Reno, school psychologist and safety security expert. John, thank you very much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So looking forward to your conversation on July 18th. So that's going to be when your keynote. It's going to be right before our trade show. It's going to be a lunch keynote. So some folks get to eat some food and then get some nourishment from you, John. A very hot topic, I think, all the time, really, in school transportation, but certainly of late. Aggression, youth aggression, identifying risk factors and prevention strategies on the school bus is the topic that you're going to be speaking on. Can I give our audience, first of all, a little bit background on you and what you bring to the table in terms of your expertise?
My background starts actually in the, I guess you could say, in the industry of violence prevention in the mid-'80s when I started working in an acute care psychiatric hospital with dual diagnosed youth and adults. My particular assignment, I guess you could say, was to work with those with the greatest hostility and aggressive behavior, some of that violent behavior. And I enjoyed it weirdly, and moved on to pursue that as a second career. I was a professional artist at the time, and still am, with the BFA in painting and printmaking. But I went into graduate work in educational psychology and then eventually school psychology so that I can move those skills to K through 12, maybe higher ed, and see if there was kind of a niche there. And there certainly was. This is now the early 90s. And gosh, there were so many job offers just because I was willing to work with these kids that were so troubling to many people. As time went on, some school shootings occurred during the 90s, as we're all aware, and Oregon passed some legislation that required policy and some procedure. My school district wanted to get ahead of all that and tasked me with creating a program that wasn't just reactionary, and it was the first of its kind. It was highly collaborative. I invited all the agencies that serve youth, mental health, public mental health, protective services, juvenile justice, law enforcement, and several other school districts to participate. And we created this collaborative team, and out of that team designed something that is now referred to as the Salem-Kaiser Cascade model, which is, I think, what I'm known for, is spearheading that project, writing the protocols, and some books about that. That model, the first of its kind, became a gold standard over time, one of three models that I think the vast majority of the country uses to identify violent behavior. So violent behavior is aggression, but it's aggression that's going to end with someone being severely injured or dead. So aggression is a continuum from slapping someone to trying to kill them. And so this kind of focuses on that real extreme aggression and identifying risk factors for that kind of potential behavior, which is rare, and separating that out from typical run-of-the-mill aggression, some of which is normative with our youth, some of which isn't. But I really identifying the difference because people were running in fear of everything. And youth behavior is not binary. It's not evil or good. If you step foot in a middle school, you know there's just all kinds of wildness that goes on in there. You couldn't pick normative in a middle school. It's just all over the map. So really helping principals and directors and bus drivers and custodians and teachers recognize where something is really concerning. And, we need to move it forward to these teams of people that can get in the way of it so the student doesn't severely hurt someone or try and end up in jail. The goal of this is to keep kids out of jail, too. We don't want them committing conspiracy crimes or assaults that are going to take them out of public education and put them in an institution. We want to try to keep all kids close to us, connect with them, and get them through successfully. But identifying where the reactive kind of run-of-the-mill aggression is different from that volatile or I should say violent behavior, and how to handle them differently. It's not okay that kids get in fights and threaten, but if we work in education and we think that's not going to happen, we should probably find another job, because it is normative. That's how they develop. They solve their problems through bravado. They're very self-centered. They get angry and emotional, and they say a lot of stuff that's scary. And it's sorting all that out, figuring out how to say, hey, not okay. We're going to teach you some new skills, replacement skills, so that you don't turn to this every time you get angry. But we're also not going to pillory you, and run you out of town. We get it. We were once young, too.
Absolutely.
So I ended up doing all of that, creating that program. And I was then appointed to be the director of security, risk management, behavioral threat assessment, and emergency management for the last 5 years of my career. And I use that same idea, those kind of systemic thinking, very much a customer-based model to build out the same kinds of concepts in security, risk management, and emergency management. And I retired from that in 2019, and now I work around the country advising school districts and departments of ed on violence prevention, risk factors, and building systems similar to the Salem-Keizer Cascade model.
Okay. And so by Salem-Keizer, of course, that's referring to Salem-Keizer School District in Oregon. We know that school district very well. Michael Shields is the retired director of transportation. Our friend TJ Crockett is the current transportation director. But you were a school psychologist there, and you were safety and risk management services director. Yeah. And I first heard your name through Michael Shields, who, of course, some of you out there in school transportation nationland will remember him from STN EXPO Reno. Several years ago, he was a co-chair back when we did such thing, helping us, kind of put together the content. And he first told me about you. So it's been years I've been trying to talk to you and get you to Reno. So thanks again for coming. Yeah, really looking forward to it. So now let's talk about transportation. Obviously, a lot of the programs that are out there are geared towards the classroom. It always is kind of the classroom first. But in terms of the school bus as an extension of the classroom, take us through maybe some of the differences between classroom and school bus, some of the similarities. And perhaps, through some of that work, I think with the transportation team at Salem-Keizer, I think that helped kind of shape some of your work as well, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. My view is that everyone's an educator, first of all, regardless of whatever their job is. They're teaching kids in some manner. They're exampling, and they're responsible to report if students are in harm's way. In loco parentis applies. They're the parent when the kids aren't there. And so the material I teach is very systemic, but that said, they're very different environments. So I think the biggest difference between the classroom and the bus is that kids, even though they don't always act like it, when they sit in a classroom, they know that their job is to learn and sit still and focus, take notes. Now, they don't all do that, but at least from the time they can talk and the time they start learning, their parents start talking about going to school and being in a classroom and having a teacher. And so their construct of the classroom is that it's a learning environment. It's where, you're supposed to build your mind. When they leave that classroom, they hit the hallways or they hit the playground or they get on the bus, that is not their mindset. Their mindset changes to, thank God I'm out of class. I'm going to let off some steam. Especially the kids that are smack dab in the middle of adolescence, and they've got all this pent up energy and rage and just all this stuff that they can't put into words. And we have trouble putting it into words and recollection. We're just really glad we never have to live those days again. And they get on a bus and they're not there to learn at all. They're trying to have fun, and then they're angry, some of them, and they find people that have upset them, or they're trying to prove themselves and their status. And so you get the bravado, and the way they see it is very different than how they see the classroom. And while you have kids in a classroom who will misbehave at the same levels they will on a bus, I think you have more kids on the bus that misbehave. They're basically they're little popcorn kernels stepping into a popcorn machine. And especially when you get around age like 11 to 15, and it's just. And in this situation, we have one manager, the bus driver, whose job is to drive safely and be situationally aware to the road, and also situationally aware to the kids behind that bus driver. That is a monumental task. Teachers step into their classroom. They know their environment. They can get a sense over here that Billy and Johnny are going to have a problem. They separate them. They've got a couple of instructional assistants. They can call down to the office and say, this is going to be a tough day. Can somebody maybe take Johnny and go on a walk, shoot some hoops? Johnny's on a behavior plan, blah, blah, blah. A lot of resources to try to get in the way of the problem. And they're great at that. Teachers have extremely situationally aware. In their environment, they're the ones that know something's out of place, because that's, there's this place they work. Bus drivers also of the road of driving conditions, the string of traffic behind the bus when they're about to pull over, throw those stop signs out. And at the same time, trying to keep track of the temperature of the popcorn machine through a rearview mirror. And if trained, some bus drivers, or as many as possible, can have some mitigation skills or some de-escalation skills that may require pulling the bus over, addressing the problem, radioing for help if that is the case, but knowing where that threshold is and having that support in their department for that threshold. So that environment, to me, the transportation environment, is still kind of a new frontier, as departments of transportation within districts or contracted services figure out those thresholds. And also, basically, the climate and the temperature of 2023 fall as it comes at us a year and a half post-COVID, where kids are still 2 years behind, and emotionally, and psychologically, academically. Navigating that is, to me, would be like navigating a brand new classroom structure. So I would have people learn the basics of de-escalation, which I'm going to be talking about. To some degree, I'll certainly advise on the way I think structures can be set up for bus drivers to have the level of support they need to be able to address not just the road, but everything that's going on behind them, and try to get in the way of fights and escalated behavior that can make driving unsafe. And a lot of that has to do with the entire system of transportation, and then even the school district, their discipline system, and how that's looked at, and all the way to the superintendent and the board.
Mm-hmm. So, and one of the things someone told me recently that really stuck out, the biggest difference, to your point, between the classroom, teachers, and school bus drivers is, I think, on day one of like teaching school, they tell you never turn your back on your kids in the classroom. And that's what the bus driver is doing
the whole time,
the entire time. So without giving away the farm, can you give just kind of an idea to some attendees, or maybe some folks that aren't able to come, about kind of, when you're looking at trying to train, especially like a new bus driver, or maybe even a bus driver who's been doing this for 30 years. But like you mentioned, here post-COVID, we're a couple years, into this now, where I think, the emotional and mental issues that have arisen from it, the academic issues that have arisen from it that are linked a lot of times to the emotional. School bus drivers have already been trying to figure that out. But maybe it's kind of, like a 30,000 foot level view, without giving away the farm again on your talk. Some of it maybe like the initial things that school bus drivers and student transportation leaders need to look at when they're trying to develop training to identify these risk factors?
I would first of all, I would say simple and succinct is the best way to try to teach a concept, and then we can build on it later. So if you think about an initial training and then a slightly more advanced training with your cadre. So as your bus drivers gain experience in yearly or semi-annual trainings, adding depth and drill down information to these concepts. So we wouldn't want to try to train them to be experts right out the gate, right? We want to give them enough basic information about what situational awareness is and how to read a room. And the easiest way to do that with bus drivers is to talk about driving and, defensive driving. I use Cooper's colors. I'll use it in my presentation, but I talk about, being completely unaware and then being relaxed and aware. But you're aware. You're not hypervigilant. You're not tachycardic. Your adrenaline isn't pumping, but you're watching up ahead. You're watching the icy road. You're looking at pedestrians and their behavior at the corner. You've got somebody too close behind you. You're pumping the brakes. You're driving in a manner that you as a bus driver, you're an expert driver. And you do that almost without thinking about it. You're not on the phone texting. You're not doing things that are distracting you. Likewise, teachers read their classroom in a manner that's in that second stage of Cooper's colors, where they're relaxed, but they're just reading this room and figuring out their baseline, what they can expect every day. And then the things that go beyond that baseline, that threshold, are the things that get addressed. So the first thing I do is I would speak to that so that everyone understands where we're headed. Then provide some information about risk factors for violent behavior and risk factors or typical risk factors for reactive, rageful aggression that is somewhat normative, if not normative. Add parents to that equation. So now we're talking about kids. What about dad or mom who walks up on the bus, gets in the bus driver's face, reads them their rights, and gives a good scare to the bus driver? How do we know whether that person is about to punch somebody in the face or posturing? So I want to provide a little information about what that looks like, body language, and how to read that, and just real basic stuff, then how to de-escalate that. And at the end of this, what are the risk factors for violent behavior? Someone bringing a gun on the bus and shooting a rival gang member, somebody who stole a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or a mass shooting. Those risk factors are different. They are harder to see. They're under the radar because they're premeditative, and a person who's engaged in that behavior wants to be successful. They are not broadcasting those. So how do your bus drivers pick up on that as they hear everything that's said behind it? The good news is the 3 positions in education where kids speak boldly and unapologetically and frankly in front of are custodians, lunch attendants, and bus drivers. They don't seem to recognize there's a person listening. They talk in front of custodians absolutely differently than they talk in front of teachers and principals. Same with lunch attendants and to some degree bus drivers. So there is a tremendous amount of information that goes through a bus that can be picked up on. So the end task of all this is bus drivers can be that first source of information if someone's thinking of doing something very terrible. Mm-hmm. They hear those risk factors, and I'll be definitely speaking to those because that's what's on everyone's mind ultimately is a school shooting on my bus.
Exactly. And in closing, I want to just jump on that last point, being the psychologist that you are, wondering if you have any quick thoughts on why students view school bus drivers or custodians and food service people at a lower tier. I mean, and this is something that we see in society, right? The school bus industry is always talking about, hey, this is an extension of the classroom. You need to respect the trade. You need to respect the employees getting kids to and from school when a lot of kids wouldn't even be able to learn if they didn't have that opportunity. But yet we see this disconnect. Interested just kind of your closing thoughts, being the psychologist, why that is.
Well, and I don't know if they see those positions as lower tier as much as they don't see the person. So a custodian, for example, is often in the background, working, sweeping, and is just part of the decoration, what is school, not interacting, not engaging. We finally got our custodians to stop wearing earbuds because they're a source of information. In fact, what did it was a terrible video of a strangulation that happened just right under a custodian's nose, 2 kids. And the custodian was in their own world. They're listening to the earbuds, doing the thing. They've not been told to engage and interact with kids. So I don't think I don't even think there's a viewpoint of like, oh, well, this is just a bus driver. She can't get us in trouble. I don't think they're thinking that. I think they're just thinking there's a bus and it's driving and it's going. There's a person at the front of the bus focused on the road. They're not listening to us. They're not thinking about us. They're not talking to us. They're not trying to teach us, as opposed to the principal who walks down the hallway and, that's the guy that can call my parents, kick me out of school, change my classes, or the teacher, the one who's giving me grades, or the IA, the one who's modifying my behavior when I'm in class.
Exactly.
So I think I would almost describe it as a wallpaper issue.
Gotcha.
This is how the school's designed. There are these people, and they're part of the decorations, so to speak. And I don't think there's even a judgment on a kid's part other than to think that's not somebody I have to worry about.
And that's maybe part of the problem. That's what we hear, is that transportation doesn't get the support.
Yeah.
Where school bus drivers are trying to, they have their classroom. They're trying to instill discipline, but they're not getting backed up. And that's an issue that we see over and over again.
100%. That's where Mike Shields really was an amazing advocate. And he had a bullhorn that he had to use. And, and as good as he was 3 steps forward, 2 backwards on getting supports, the kinds of things that that we're going to talk about. And also when Mike and I worked together, I think we had some focus groups and talked about, what would make a successful bus program and what kind of supports and dollars do we want to put into that? And it was interesting. Everyone was in agreement on it, directors of curriculum, but no money got moved. Very little money got moved. There's a price tag to it, Yeah. So
taking away money from the classroom, right? From books and
it's less books, less teachers, and yet some really terrible stuff has gone on buses. Really terrible stuff, absolutely. And that helped his cause to be able to say, you want to see a little bit of a video of what can happen, and people were, terrified by what they saw.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, looking so much forward to your talk on July 18th. That's going to be noon till 1:30, our lunch and keynote with John Van Dreal, youth aggression, identifying risk factors and prevention strategies on the school bus. That's going to be a great topic. Really looking forward to it again, John.
All right.
Looking forward to meeting you in person as well. So thanks so much again for coming on and talking a little bit about what you'll be discussing next month.
It's great to be here. We'll see you very soon.
Travel safe.
Okay, thank you.
A special thanks to Ryan Gray and John Van Dreal for jumping on the podcast. We appreciate you guys. Great conversation. Really excited for STN EXPO, July 14th through the 19th. Can't wait to hear that keynote, John. It's going to be really great to talk about de-escalation, everything having to go on the school bus. There's so many issues and challenges these days, and great to get insights from experts like you. Such good content. Guys, we appreciate our sponsors this week, TransFinder, BYD Ride, and School Radio. Everyone, we hope you have a great 4th of July holiday. It is going to be a great one. Hopefully warm weather, fireworks, family, all the great things. Nation, we can't wait to see you in Reno, July 14th through the 19th, stnexpo.com. And also for all the latest industry coverage from the conference, go to stnonline.com for all your student transportation needs, news updates, legislative updates, all the best coverage from the content and networking events at STN Expo. Nation, we love you. We'll see you next week.